first speaker is Rob Schilling. Mr. Schilling is a former city councilman in the city of Charlottesville and is the host of the Schilling Show on WINA. Please welcome Rob Schilling. So how great to be here. Thank you so much. How great to be here talking about the Bill of Rights, and I'm going to spend some time on the First Amendment, and I'm going to actually exercise the First Amendment right now, and I hope I don't offend anybody. I'm going to do this very loudly. Christmas! Christmas! Are the police on their way and coming out of City Hall with handcuffs? It has become a crime, unfortunately. And it's interesting that we're spending this time to remember today, because I think so many people have forgotten or don't care to know what the Bill of Rights is or the history of the country. I wonder if it's still being taught in schools, and I have a feeling that it's not. I have a feeling that if we did some interviews and checked out some of the kids, just a random sampling of kids graduating from Charlottesville High School or Albemarle High School, and asked them some of these questions, they would have no idea. In fact, they may think just the opposite. And they may think the opposite, that the rights are in fact given by government, as our 5th District Congressman answered when presented the question very recently, where do the rights come from? He was a little confused about that. So I want to talk about breaches and why we ought to be concerned with breaches, and some of the breaches that I've certainly come across. And one of them has to do with the way I chose to offend you originally by saying the word Christmas several times very loud. Here in the city of Charlottesville, what used to be called a Christmas tree is now called a holiday tree. And that is by, I guess, executive order over here in City Hall from the city manager. The lighting of the Christmas tree, now called the holiday tree, is now referred to as the grand illumination. So we're completely getting away from it in every way that we can. And this has got to be the greatest breach in the city of Charlottesville, that the celebration in Christmas is now called, get this, the Charlottesville tradition. That is how it's referred to by the Department of Disinformation, that is headquartered in here and spends about $1 million a year in your tax money. It is the Charlottesville tradition, and they invite people to come down and celebrate that instead of to celebrate Christmas. I had occasion last year to interview a guy who put out a movie called Indoctrinate You. And he talked about going across the United States of America to places of higher education, universities and colleges across America, and asking them about their anti-constitutional practices and about how speech was shut up, particularly when it came from a particular point of view or didn't come there, and how the man was run off the campus on many times under force of police threat to leave because he was simply asking questions about the policies here. He showed the sorts of classes that were being taught and how they were indoctrinating people in Marxism and socialism by the use of our tax dollars, and yet people who came to the university who were invited with a conservative or libertarian perspective were not only oftentimes jeered off the stage, but oftentimes physically assaulted. And he had video of these people being assaulted when they came and brought a message forward that somehow was offensive to people who were there at the universities. It is certainly not what was intended by the Founding Fathers. And as we look at what's happened in America and how everything has turned, we must be concerned by this, and we must be prepared to take action. I think about the fairness doctrine. And I remember growing up in Southern California and watching the news, and every time somebody had an opinion, there was some other guy that came on and gave the other opinion. And they would say at the end of the broadcast, you know, because of the laws of the United States of America, we are required to present the opposing point of view. And then someone would come on, and even as a kid, I had a sense there was something very wrong about that you're forcing somebody to give up, to cede public airtime that's owned by a private company to the public. And it just seemed wrong to me. And so for years and years, we lived under the fairness doctrine, the so-called fairness doctrine, and how misnamed that is. Until about 1987, when Ronald Reagan, through the FCC, overturned the fairness doctrine and it went away. And so over the course of the past couple of years, what have we seen? Well, actually the past couple of decades, we've seen a resurgence of free thought and a whole new industry. That would be a national syndicated talk radio host, which up until that time there was almost no such thing except maybe late in the night. that have brought forward a lot of wealth into the country, have made a lot of people able to have a career, something that was never possible before, because they're bringing forth a message that was suppressed artificially over many, many years. And yet this is now perceived to be a threat. This free speech, because since I'm in the business, I know what everybody else does. They're doing it on a larger scale than me, but they're just speaking their mind, and they're allowing other people to come forward and speak their mind, is now under threat. It's under threat because people in the government are concerned that when people get the information that's being brought forward by these shows, that somehow it's going to threaten the established power structure and the dominant paradigm. So they're talking about bringing back the Fairness Doctrine, and if it's not under the name of the Fairness Doctrine, they're talking about bringing it back under another name. And one of the things that was discussed I found just fascinating, again considering my own situation, is that they're talking about bringing community review panels. In other words, we'll get some people from the community to come forward and sit around a table and decide what is fair. And if you are having a balanced presentation on a privately owned radio station like WINA or any other in this market. And I thought about myself sitting under judgment of whatever this community panel would look like here in Charlottesville, and having seen what the community panels look like because I helped to appoint some of them from inside of City Hall. I know that my career would be short-lived if I was subject to a community review panel who was deciding whether or not what I had to say was worthy by their standards. And I must tell you that there have been more than one occasion upon which the government, which is housed right behind you, has called my radio station after something I've said and asked them to tell me to stop saying it. I don't know what the threats were that were behind it, but there are members of this government, I'm well aware, who have called up after I've said something on the air and asked that I be silenced. And so that is the extent to which government is out of control, not only nationally, but here locally.